Today is a glorious day because Stillknocks Duplessis has defeated Israel the last stylebender Adesanya. Not only defeated the man, but he made him tap. Right there in Perth, Australia, where Izzy said he first realized his dream and he was going to kill Dricus's dream. Dricus made him tap. Right there. Right in the spot. All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it. We right back with it. It's your boy Matt, and we are here to go over UFC 305 that went down Saturday night in Perth, Australia, in which in the main event, Dricus Stillknocks Duplessis goes out there and defeats Israel the last stylebender Adesanya. Man, so let's get off into it. So, if you've been watching my channel for a while, then you would know I am not a huge fan of Izzy. I will say when he first came into the UFC, I kind of liked the dude. I remember, watching Joe Rogan's podcast back in the day before he came to the UFC. And Joe Rogan was always talking about if we get this guy, Israel Adesanya, it's a wrap, right? So I remember when he came in and I thought, okay, this dude has an amazing style of fighting. Seemed like he had that warrior's mentality, so to speak. And I thought, okay, this guy might be all right. As he started to gain popularity and he started to get fame, you could kind of see a lot of his mental hang-ups and in a way a lot of his mental weaknesses. But as it is nowadays, when a mob of people like one person and you're like the one dude that don't like that person, a lot of the time you're going to catch heat, you're going to get vilified, so on and so forth. But this entire time, I never understood how Adesanya fans couldn't see all the holes in this man's logic and all the weaknesses in his mentality that are he has a lot of weaknesses in his mentality that we're supposed to believe are a strength, but they're not, right? They're not. So let's talk about just a little bit about the fight week, because looking at this card, this was a decent card, but there's a lot of these fights we're not going to have to go into detail on, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the main event. Let's go. So if you look at last week's fight week, first off, let's talk about the one Izzy fan. There's the most important thing about fight week going into the fight is one person. One person may have caused all of this, okay? There's one guy that might be the culprit to the downfall of Israel Adesanya, and it's not Stillknocks. Who was the idiot at the press conference that asked that question about it not being about culture and not being about race, even though it was made to be about culture and race? And he was alluding to Dricus Duplessis, and he was asking Adesanya a question about, the whole back and forth between Izzy and Dricus over the real true African champion. That homie right there, that dude, he might have ruined it. He might have ruined it for Adesanya. You know what I'm saying? Why do I say that? Because that homie asking that question is what got Adesanya charged to say what he was saying. Thus, Dricus hit him with the servant's comment, and Izzy lost his shit. Lost it. Went crazy, started crying, started talking about his family, how he does it for them. And I get it, man. We all got families. We got real emotions. But this was unlike anything you had ever seen before in a pre-fight press conference the week of one of the biggest grudge matches in the UFC. Not the biggest, but one of. And you could tell that guy was an Adesanya fan, and he was trying to ask a question that would set Adesanya up to clown Dricus, and it completely backfired. It backfired to the point that after Izzy started crying and broke down and John Anik just had to end the press conference, I wondered if that fan just kind of I wondered if he just kind of backed away into the bushes like the Homer Simpson meme. He just, you know what I'm saying? Because this homie, hey, wherever you're at, sir, you might have been you might be an Adesanya fan, but you might have cost your boy the fight because Adesanya, he looked all right during the build-up during the fight week, where I was beginning to question if everything back and forth between him and Dricus was even affecting him. That is until that guy asked that question. I saw him crying, and at that point it was the Leonardo DiCaprio meme, and I'm pointing, and I'm like, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, there's a good chance he gonna lose this fight. You know, he might lose. So then let's fast forward, okay? Let's fast forward to the fight. Great fight. Outstanding title fight. So, I'm going to break this down. I will say, man, I'm not an Izzy fan, but I'm going to give him his just due. He looked great in this fight. He looked great. So, let's start out. Round one. Round one, when these two guys, when they first started fighting, a little tentative at first, you know, a few jabs, you know. Dricus was kind of going to work with a couple of leg kicks. Then when Dricus did that first bum rush, that first rush in, you know, that Stillknocks rush, you know what I'm talking about. And when he did that, the fight was on and popping after that. And what is interesting about Dricus is he enters these rushes with his arms way up, blocking his head, and it's all one fluid motion. As he rushes the pocket, he's throwing a punch, but he begins the rush like this, just in case Adesanya is going to try to time a shot to drop him. Very interesting style, and as he's entering, and the guy, his opponent, is like, oh my God, he's entering. Well, I'm getting ready to drop him. Before they can, he's already extending his punch. He's already into a jab or into a straight shot. Very interesting style. And I mean, I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said to the lead up of this fight or the entire weekend. It's not the most visually pleasing style by Dricus du Plessis. But man, does it work. It works. Now, with that being said, round one, a lot of back and forth between both men. This round is the toss-up round, meaning you could have given this to Izzy or you could have given this to Dricus du Plessis. Personally, I felt like Dricus landed the harder shots, so I gave it to Dricus. But if you wanted to give it to Izzy, who was piecing it up with the jab, he hadn't started the body work yet, but he was just going to work with the jab, then I'll go along with you. If you want to give that to Stylebender, I'll go along with you. Second round, in my opinion, Dricus started to go to work. Second round, you know, we had a takedown. You know, Dricus is landing some heavy shots. Now he's starting to perfect his Russian style more. The Stillknocks rush is what I'm going to dub that. So he's perfecting his bum rush a little bit more. He's coming in. He started lighting him up with great body kicks. He being Dricus, lighting up Izzy with good body kicks. But Izzy is still picking him off with the jab, with the little sidestep. He's throwing a check hook. He's looking good. And honestly, I gave this round to Dricus. But if it wasn't for the grappling or the wrestling, I probably wouldn't have given it to Dricus. Okay? Let's move on to the third round. Third round, in my opinion, Izzy took that one. Third round, it seemed like to me, Izzy had started to, as best as he could, he started to perfect the timing of the Stillknocks rush and was trying to sidestep. He was trying to get off the center line as Dricus was rushing and catch him with a hook or a check hook, right? But to du Plessis' credit, even when he would get caught by Adesanya's shots, his chin was solid, he was not going down, and he kept pushing through the fatigue. The third round is when I really feel like Izzy started to really utilize the body work because Dricus kept rushing in with those arms up, and he kept, a lot of his guard was his arms up and it exposed his body, and Izzy was going to work, man. And it was really when I really first started to see like a ton of fatigue on DDP in this fight. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he was getting lit up to the body. But it was also when you're seeing the heart and just like, I don't even know what you would call what Stillknocks has. You know what I'm saying? It's heart, but it's also, it's like, it's almost like, I don't really even know how to describe it because the man is fatigued. The man is hurt. His energy is zapped, but he somehow is able to get his body to still react and throw shots and continue what he had been training. But it was clear there wasn't a lot of steam on what he was throwing, so you would think, but then it would land and you could tell that Izzy was feeling it. Really weird, but nevertheless, the third round, I gave that to Izzy, right? So I gave Dricus round 1, but I could definitely see if you gave that to Izzy, cool. I gave round 2 to Dricus. I gave round 3 to Izzy. Now let's move into the 4th round. This is the pivotal round. We go into the 4th round, and in this round, I gave the first half of it to Izzy. I feel like the first half of this, Izzy was really starting to come on, pause, to Dricus du Plessis. I really feel like he really started to do his thing. I think the beginning, first half of that round, Dricus was still feeling the fatigue. He was really starting to get fatigued from that body work from the 3rd round. And early on, I feel like Izzy was doing his thing. Now, while I'm thinking about, one thing I will say, Mark Goddard, bro, I'm not a big conspiracy person, so I'm not getting ready to sit there and say this really happened. But bro, what did Mick Maynard, did Sean Shelby, did Dana White slide you a little extra on the low to look away from a few of the offenses of Israel Adesanya? I mean, we had cage grabbing. He's just linking his fingers in the cage. John Anik is like trying to say, Izzy posts off the cage. He did not post off the cage. He gets warned for a cage grab. The one warning after, there was like a total of maybe 3 to 4 different cage grabs. Somewhere in the middle, Mark Goddard gave him one warning about it that I heard. And John Anik's like, well, I saw, I didn't see a fence grab, but da-da-da. And I'm like, dude, come on, dude. We know business-wise you want Izzy to win, but come on, don't make it so obvious. Anyway, I'm just joking. There was no real conspiracy. But anyway, back to the fight. 4th round, first half of it, Izzy's doing work. And I'm thinking, oh, dude, my boy DDP, I don't know. Because he was just looking so fatigued, and Adesanya was still looking sharp with his shots. Then there was a moment in which Adesanya is still landing shots, and there was a moment when I believe he caught Dricus. I mean, he caught him with multiple body shots, but he caught him with a great combination to the body, and DDP fired back with a hard right hand, and you could almost see Adesanya kind of like, okay, like. It was almost that realization that you had been putting together this great game plan. You had put together all of these shots, and Stillknocks is not going away, and he's still firing back. And even though he's fatigued, these shots still hurt. And so then, in the middle of the 4th round, at a moment, now this has been, this has been Zapruder filmed, but in my opinion, I thought he tried to do the Max Bless Holloway thing, where there's a moment where Izzy gets caught with a shot and he points to the ground like, let's throw these hands. Let's bang. Let me bang, bro. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, dog, this dude, Izzy, points to the ground that he's trying to get it in, and Stillknocks obliges him, right? And Stillknocks rushes in, whips a few arm shots at him. Not a whole lot of torque from the body. Whips a few arm shots. Izzy turns his back because he gets caught with the first one. I think he turns his back to try to evade, but Stillknocks keeps the Stillknocks rush going. Catches him with more arm punches, but they're looping around to the temples of Adesanya. Adesanya falls to his knees. Dricus, who tried to submit Izzy early on in the fight, jumps to the back, gets the hooks in, secures the choke, flips him over, and makes the last style bender tap in the middle of Perth, Australia, where he realized his dream, Izzy's dream died. And with that, all the beef, all of the bad blood that he had for Dricus du Plessis, all the mean things he said, and I'm not saying that Dricus didn't say things about Izzy, but miraculously everything melted away once he lost that fight. First off, shout out to Dricus du Plessis. He gets the job done. He gets it done in impressive fashion. He left nothing to the judges. He left nothing up in the air. He made the man tap. Not just submitted him, he tapped him. This is what I'll say. Much respect, much love to Dricus du Plessis, because when he won the fight, he showed so much poise and respect to Adesanya and Adesanya's family. When we all know, now, Izzy did reciprocate that, but we all know, come on. And Izzy fans, I see him online lying about this and not wanting to accept this. But we all know if Adesanya would have won that fight, the celebration, the negativity he would have spewed about du Plessis, the celebration to du Plessis, the pettiness, all of this would have just fell from Izzy like an avalanche. You know what I'm saying? Nevertheless, the one smart thing I've seen Adesanya do in the last few years is when Dricus started to show him respect and apologize to him and did all of these things, Izzy went along with that. Because otherwise he was going to get booed out of the building. I mean, you know what I'm saying? He already, after all of this back and forth of the one true African, Izzy went as far to say that du Plessis is the African champion. You know what I'm saying? Gave him that recognition that you are the current African champion. And Africa still wins because they have a champion. Shout out to Izzy for doing all of that. I commend him for doing all that. But part of me believes the same man that humped Paulo Costa from behind, that mocked Pereira in front of his children when he knocked out Pereira. Granted, he's trying to, get a little bit of revenge on a child from years before where Pereira knocked him out. I have a hard time believing that Izzy would have been as respectful if he would have won the fight, but nevertheless, man, Stillknocks, Dricus du Plessis goes out. He gets the job done. He was a true class act. Even gave Adesanya later on in the night, there's video footage of him giving Adesanya his fight week jacket that he had on. Outstanding things, man. Outstanding things. Izzy faked like he was going to retire right after, only to say that he wasn't going to retire. I know this was in his mind. He thought this was going to be this big moment. It did not resonate with the Perth crowd. They didn't really react to it, as most things that Izzy does, because he's very out of touch. But nevertheless, man, Izzy put on a great fight. Great fight. I mean, up until that moment in the fourth round, I kind of had it. I had it 2 rounds, and at that point, Izzy was winning the fourth round, in my opinion, the first half of the fourth round. So I would, if you look at it, let's say he still would have won the fourth round, Izzy, I would have had it 2-2. Two for Drickus, two for Izzy. So shout out to him. He fought well. I don't think that he's necessarily washed. I think mentally he's got some things he needs to work out, because I think mentally he realizes he's not that dude anymore. He's not the cool kid in the UFC anymore, and it's starting to affect him as far as his fighting. I feel like his killer instinct might not necessarily be there because of these mental hangups, but he can still fight. He still fights at the top of the division. So shout out to him. And let's move forward, man. In the co-main event at flyweight, in performance of the night, we saw Kai Kara France go out there and defeat Steve Erceg. Shout out to Kai Kara France, man. You could tell this really was a weight lifted off his shoulders. It really meant a lot to him. He was hyping up, he was hyping up. He was making the cool faces and everything the whole fight week. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Kai Kara France. It'll be interesting to see where they go with him. I'm not sure if that was enough to get a fight with Pantoja, of course, but it definitely puts him in the conversation to get another big, huge fight. And then after, if he wins that one, he might be able to get that shot at Pantoja. So, shout out to Kai Kara France. Shout out to Steve Erceg. Can't wait to see Astro Boy back in there. I mean, he's definitely not done either. Let's move on to fight of the night. Mateusz Gamrot, my guy, in there with Dan Hooker. This was an extremely close fight. I picked Mateusz Gamrot to win this fight. I'm not even going to front. This was a really close fight, but I really do think that Dan Hooker probably edged out Mateusz Gamrot. I know that Mateusz Gamrot had a lot of control time, but he wasn't doing a ton of damage with all of his control time. I would say that Dan Hooker won that fight. So now we got blonde-haired, tatted Dan Hooker has rejuvenated his career, has made a bounce back from the depths of you about to get cut, and has put himself in a great rankings position. And the next fight I would like to see Dan Hooker in at lightweight is another man that had a career resurgence after he got a lot of tattoos and dyed his hair blonde. And that man's name is Charlie Olives, Du Bronx, Charles Oliveira. That's the fight I want to see. Shout out to Dan Hooker. Let's move on. Taito Avasa in a fight with Jairzinho Rozenstruik. This wasn't as action-packed as I thought it was going to be. Jairzinho goes out there and gets the win. That was my pick on who I thought was going to get the win. I thought this was gonna bang a little bit harder than what it did, but it is what it is. Jairzinho goes out there and gets the win. Taito Avasa, he definitely won't get cut by the UFC because he is an action fighter, but I'm not sure where they're going to go with him next, but there's that. Let's move on. In another performance of the night, we have Carlos Parates steps in there with Li Jingling, the Leech. Man, Carlos looked like a world beater, didn't he? This man, Li Jingliang, bro. He's a tough fighter. He ain't no joke. He's been around for a minute, veteran. He knows what he's doing, man. Carlos went in there and worked him on the feet and then knocked him out. So, that was that. Carlos is definitely looking like he's definitely going to be a prospect in the division. We need to see more from him to know, but a little bit stiffer competition, but dude looked good. Let's move on. We got Junior Tafa gets defeated by Walter Walker. Bro, I didn't really understand what was going on with the commentary. So basically, Tafa gets cinched up in a leg lock, and he screams out while Walter is rolling for the leg, and the referee stops the fight. I didn't understand what the commentators didn't get about this, because that's always been the rule in mixed martial arts. If you get locked in a submission, if you verbally, you don't have to say tap, you don't have to, verbally say you give up, but if you scream out, the referee stops it, because for all they know, your knee could be getting shredded, and you might not think to yell out tap, and they want to stop it. So this was a valid submission. So I don't really know what was going on there. How about Junior Tafa slapping Walter in the face, just open hand, just just slapping him in the face after the fight. Interesting stuff, but nevertheless, man, Walter Walker gets the win, and shout out to him because this was one of the more intelligent fight call-outs of the night. He instantly calls out Tafa's brother. I mean, you can't get him better than that. That sets up a whole other fight for Walter. It sets up a grudge. You know, it's almost like a family grudge because apparently the older brother of Tafa was saying a lot of bad things about Johnny Walker. So it's like, bro, it really sets up like a tag team brother match. But more importantly, it gets Walter back. Possibly, you know, they might put him on the main card of the next time he fights against the other Tafa brother. Shout out to him. Great call out. Let's move on. How about Josh Khalilbaum stepping in there with Ricardo Ramos? Bro, Khalilbaum this was an example of one of the worst fight IQs I had ever seen. He completely gave this fight away. There was a point in which he had been lighting up the leg of Ramos so much that he collapsed to the ground. And instead of Josh telling the referee to have him stand back up and finishing him with leg kicks and he wouldn't have been able to continue, he chooses to keep grabbing while Ramos is laying on the ground. He chooses to keep trying to grab his ankles and grab his feet and kick him the leg while he's on the ground. This was the worst fight IQ I'd seen in a long time. You know, this was bad. This was like, Dustin Jacoby bad fight IQ. And so this was just, he deserved to lose the fight, and he lost the fight. He lost by decision, and he deserved it because he could have finished the man, and I don't know what happened there. Anyway, he lost. Next fight, we had Casey O'Neill. She goes out there against Luana Santos and gets back in the win column. Great on Casey O'Neill. She needed this fight. She needed this to keep her career going. She needed the whole thing. So shout out to her. That was good to see. We had Jack Jenkins goes out there and, of course, defeats Herbert Burns. We all saw that coming. No need to continue on with that. Herbert Burns, it's probably about time for him to walk away. We had Tom Nolan go out there against Alex Reyes. Tom Nolan, you don't have the chin for your fighting style. Be very careful. Really skilled and very technical fighter, but you don't have the chin for the openings that you leave. But Tom Nolan goes out there and gets the win. We had Song Kanan go out there and take a L to Ricky Glenn. This was very, very interesting. He lost by decision. Then we had Stuart Nicole step in there with Jesus Aguilar, and Jesus went in there and did his thing, got him up out of there via submission. Bro, Jesus is an animal, dude. That's why I picked him to win that fight. He's a beast. Nevertheless, man, that's UFC 305. Definitely a top-heavy card, but outstanding title fight. Outstanding. Dricus Stillknocks Duplessis is still the middleweight champion of the world, and we will see where the last style bender goes from here. So nevertheless, man, that was the card. It was a great show. It was outstanding, dude. I mean, it just was, I just want to pull up something here real quick. Let's see. I do apologize. I just wanted to pull up something real quick, but my YouTube is not working. Okay, well, never mind. YouTube's not working. I wanted to send a shout out to a couple of guys who follow me that were, talking about, they were hitting me up about how great this fight was and about Dricus Duplessis winning. I do apologize. I can't remember your names off the top of my head, and for some reason, I can't get YouTube to pop up on my phone. It's just spinning right now. So, took a L there. But shout out to you guys. I appreciate all the love. I appreciate you reaching out. Stillknocks Duplessis goes out there, gets the win. I will shout you all out on my next video once YouTube is working again. So, once again, I do want to thank you guys for, all of the comments, all of the love. I really desperately, I do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And I do want to thank you for watching another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I check you next time. Peace.